Good morning, I'm Andy Kirkham. I'm this Sunday's Elder of the Day at Laurel Presbyterian Church. Welcome to this morning's worship service video. We hope you are continuing to be safe and healthy and exercising caution as the nation, Maryland, and the counties in which we live continue to monitor the increasing number of cases of COVID-19. Each week we remember a friend at home and a college student. This week's friend at home is Doris Munnerlin, and our college student of the week is Haley Bowen. I know they would enjoy a call, a card, or an email to let them know you're thinking of them. Whether this is the first time you are with us in worship, or you are with us every Sunday, may something in this morning's worship service, the music, the children's message, the scriptural reading, today's sermon, give you comfort and peace, and remind you how profoundly God loves you. Now, let us worship God and be mindful of the many ways we see and feel His presence in our lives.
Go.
This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us be glad and rejoice in it.
The responsive reading this week is from Psalm 85, verses 8 to 13. Let me hear what the Lord God says. Because you, O Lord, speak peace to your people and to your faithful ones. Don't let us return to foolish ways. Your salvation is very close to those who honor you, so that your glory can live in our land. Faithful love and truth have met. Righteousness and peace have kissed. Truth springs up from the ground. Righteousness gazes down from heaven. Yes, O God, you give what is good, and our land yields its produce. Righteousness walks before you, making a path for your steps.
On this second Sunday of Advent, it's the Sunday of Peace. And so this Sunday, we're going to hear a discussion, a conversation that my friend Kieran and I had. Kieran now lives in Northern Ireland, and that has been a place tormented for hundreds of years by violence and enmity and anger and conflict between two distinct groups of people, and she has learned so much from her experiences about peace and the hard work it takes to work for peace. And then for the children's time, I interviewed Zach Ferretti, someone who practices meditation because he knows how much a difference that can make in his world when it comes to peace. Zach is a 7th grader, I believe, at this point, a middle schooler. And after we hear from Kieran, you'll hear a conversation Zach and I had about the nature of peace. May something in these exchanges bring you good news and inspiration and a sense of peace in this Advent season. I don't know if you had a chance to look at this psalm, but I was so excited.
The lectionary for this Sunday?
Yeah, it's the lectionary for the second Sunday of Advent.
Cool.
And it's Psalm 85, and I just loved it because righteousness and peace will kiss each other. And I just thought that was beautiful for this Sunday of peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's Kieran, a longtime friend who now lives in Northern Ireland with her family and has learned so much about peace in a community that has struggled for generations to live together.
This psalm, I've actually made a new arrangement of it for my newest album of Celtic Psalms, which is one that I did over the summer. This is a psalm that has been used by the Corrymeela community in the past, and they've had a few different versions of it. So it was in my head as one that I wanted to try to use. And
Can you explain what the Corrymeela community is?
Okay, so the Corrymeela community is a community that Alex and I are involved in, and it is a group of people from Northern Ireland, but basically it's a group of people who are from Protestant and Catholic backgrounds, who are of a Christian faith, who want to seek peace, particularly between Protestants and Catholics in Northern Ireland. And as you probably know, there's been a long history of division between these people. And Corrymeela was begun by somebody named Ray Davy, who was a Protestant chaplain, and he went to Germany during the war, and he was a chaplain, military chaplain during that time, and he witnessed the bombing of Dresden in Germany, but it was done by his side. So the bombing was done by his own people and the Allies. And he was stunned and horrified by that. And when he came back to Northern Ireland, he decided that he wanted to develop a place that was a meeting place for people from across religious divides, with the thinking that the people who you might see as your enemy, have their own stories and their own backgrounds, and we need to find ways to hear each other instead of just fighting blindly with each other.
Can you quickly describe just how bad the enmity was between Protestants and Catholics, in case there are people who just think, oh, they just didn't get along?
Okay, so the history of the division between Protestants and Catholics goes back probably about at least 400 years or so. And there's been a history of Protestant settlers from England and Scotland who came to Northern Ireland and settled during a time when, that was very easy to do. They just sort of took up land and took residence and took the choice land, and, kind of became very powerful in this place. And then the result of that was that the Catholic population felt that they were second-class citizens, and that has sort of continued through the centuries. And then there have been periods of lots of unrest between the two. The Catholic community has also retaliated and, committed their own acts of violence. So it became very murky and very complicated. The squabbles between brothers and sisters where you just can't get down to the bottom of whose fault it actually was. And, and when you can't find anyone to blame, then there's no kind of resolution that can be found. So, excuse me. So there's been a lot of work over the over the years, but especially after the probably the worst period of violence, which was during the Troubles, and that was from around the 70s through to the 90s, to the end of the 90s, and that was a pretty horrific time in Northern Ireland, where the 3,500 people or so died. And when you're in this kind of a place where people know each other and people are connected to each other, that number of people is huge. And it means that you definitely know people who knew people who were killed. And, I've met people whose family members were killed, and it's just everywhere, and whether people talk about it or not, or whether they're consciously aware of it or not, it is a part of the fabric of this society. So the work of Corrymeela has been really important. So Corrymeela became a really important place for people to come together and have conversations, and for people to seek refuge if they were being targeted in their communities. And there have been countless groups that have come here for conversation, difficult conversation, but it's a safe place. It's a beautiful place. It's a place that kind of brings you peace and solace when you're here. And when groups are sent back to their home communities, what do they do with what they learned at Corrymeela? And then, a lot of programming has kind of come out of that in working with communities, not only here at Corrymeela, but also in their own spaces.
Can you describe how separate people are in their own communities? Like how much, because I think for people who aren't aware of the whole history in Northern Ireland, understanding, like, for example, you send your kids to an integrated elementary school, which to us has very different connotations. And so do most people stay within their own group, or are they daily interacting? Like what does day-to-day life look like between these two groups, these two enemies?
Yeah, well, like you were saying, our kids go to an integrated school where Protestants, Catholics, and secular or other religious people can attend. It's an intentionally mixed group, but most elementary schools are either Catholic run or they're government run, because the government run schools would be primarily Protestant, and by far the majority would be separated into their schooling groups. So as they're growing up, people here might not necessarily interact with each other, and then they have even different sports, so they'd be playing different sports on different teams. Music would also be different, and that's an area that I've done quite a bit of work in, but for like the Catholic community would do a lot of traditional music, and it would be taught within their schools, it would be taught within their families. So it's not until they get older and in the workplace, I think that's when the younger generation today would be encountering a lot more people of the other group.
Yeah.
And they would mix together pretty freely, and there would be a general sense that we're not enemies, we're they're perfectly normal people.
But at that point they would have had an entire upbringing that was more or less culturally segregated.
Yeah. So that's something that is just the way things are here, and you kind of get used to it. There are schools like ours where kids are interacting, and I think it's about half. That's the goal of most integrated schools. It's a small number of people who choose to go to those schools.
Well, one of the reasons I thought you'd be a perfect person to talk about peace is because of everything you've learned and your current context. Because right now in the States, there is such an us-them. And it's not only racial, it's political. So that division has some similarities, I feel, like with the division that Corrymeela is trying to overcome. So for us, the issues is getting red people and blue people talking, because I think that a lot of places are segregated in a way, like you only associate with your own political kind.
You know, you're kind of dividing people into camps without necessarily even speaking to them and hearing what their opinions really were. And then if you did realize that somebody was from the other camp, you would want to cease conversation, close off. I don't even want to talk about, you know, anything other than the most basic stuff. And that's exactly the kind of thing that Corrymeela is trying to work through, you know, that desire to just shut off the person from the other side. In the camp other than the one that I am in. And I really heard her story, and I really heard her pain. And it really came through in the way she was talking to this reporter. And I just thought, okay, you know, I at least with her story, I understand why she voted the way she did, why she feels so strongly. But if we don't have a chance to hear those stories, then people just become more and more an other that we're afraid to have that conversation with, because we're afraid that we're gonna be at odds with each other, and we don't know how to handle that. And anyway, you know, Corrymeela has just been a place to bring people together, to teach people and allow people to have these difficult conversations with each other.
So what have you learned about building peace between people who are even scared to talk to each other, or unwilling even?
Yeah. Well, partly that it takes time, and that there's no simple solution. But probably more than anything, the importance of hearing each other's stories, and that needs to be done in a safe environment. And the trick is to be able to get people into a space where they feel safe and where they can actually share authentically with each other. But that can be difficult to find, and it can be difficult to draw people into that space, and to, you know, get them on board with that idea of sharing their perspective in that space. And then the other thing that's difficult is, as I was saying before, returning to their home communities. And then how do you continue the conversation or how do you support those people as they try to speak with their families or their neighbors or their friends? How do you be a support to them as they have those difficult conversations in their own space? So it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of perseverance, I think, to get to a point where you can really hear each other out, and then begin to make changes that allow for the betterment of everybody.
Sometimes people are like, okay, fourth graders, we're all going to Corrymeela, like it or not.
Yeah. I mean, it's a part of school programs, so there are lots and lots of young people that come here, and they don't know what they're just going on what they call a residential. They're just going to go somewhere for a couple of days, and they're just going to have a blast with their friends. And then in that process, some of the team building efforts that they do are to build up those skills of talking to each other through difference, or developing a sense of identity, because part of the issue here is that identity is seen as something that can be threatened by someone else's identity. This is how I grew up, this is the way I think, and you can think a different way. There's a threat there's a threat between the two major identities.
Naming your identity is seen as a threatening gesture or a threatening statement. That is actually very true here as well. Like, my sense has been that people are too connected to their identity and are threatened by somebody else's identity.
Yeah, that's it. So if you unpack the idea of identity, there are identity workshops that they do with the kids, then they can build up a strong idea of who they are but also work on that understanding that it's okay for someone else to have a different identity, and that those two don't necessarily need to be opposed to each other, or we can embrace lots of different identities around us, and rejoice in the diversity of humanity, that kind of thing. So it's sort of building a strong sense of who you are, but then also being able to welcome others within that.
Yeah. So we started off by you saying that Psalm 85 is one that you just did this summer. Like, if you reflect on that Psalm, how does that guide or articulate the faith that you bring to the work you and Alex are doing, and the commitment you have to your own children in terms of learning how to live with people who are different?
When I worked on this song, I did shift the words a little bit, or I interpret what is faithfulness and what is righteousness, because I think those words are used a few times in that psalm, and I wanted to actually use different words to say, what might this actually mean in a fuller sense. So I used words like love, mercy, justice, peace, kindness, goodness, that type of language. And for me, it was a vision of what's possible, or a vision of the kingdom of God on earth, the sort of the dream or the vision of what can be. And then I ended the song with, and the people will sing. I said, actually, and God will bring healing, and the people will sing. And that's definitely from my perspective, because for me, when you have all those elements together, there's a harmony that comes into play. And singing is a representation, it's like a metaphor of how we can live in harmony with each other. And when we live with love and peace and justice and mercy and kindness and goodness, in that living out of all that, God will bring healing, and that through that healing we will be able to sing a representation of what I hope for. And it's something I hope for in Northern Ireland. I hope that there, when at some point when people can get to a place of hearing each other, and where there's a balance between love and justice and peace and mercy, and there those are different things, and they need to be in balance with each other, and when those are in balance, then that's when the healing can begin. And when
you said that as we act out of love and goodness and kindness and justice and mercy and peace, that's how God will bring healing. And I loved that image, because it's there's something for us to do, and to trust that as we live as God has called us to live, we will be healed.
I think so. I mean, obviously God helps us do that, but we have a part to play in that, and that all comes from God, but it is lived out in our lives and in our relationships. And if those elements aren't there, then there's a brokenness that just will persist.
Well, and I think too, it circles back around to identity, doesn't it? Because if you are strong in your identity as a child of God, then that identity in perfect faith would not ever be threatened. And so the other person's identity wouldn't threaten that, because that's your primary identity. And so when you talk about building up identity, it's like building our identity up as children of God.
Yeah.
First, always, ultimate, and that's it. And because the security in that gives you a place to stand to hear other people's stories without needing to say you're wrong.
Yeah.
you're uneducated,
Mhm.
you're a liberal elitist, all the things that are happening right now here.
Right, right. And then also seeing the other person as a child of God. And if we're rooted in our own belovedness, then we can see others as beloved as well, even though we don't understand them. Then we can at least hear them out, and take that quiet moment to say, I'm actually going to really listen to what this person has to say. Because there's a reason that people have strong feelings about things, and there's a reason that people vote in particular ways, and there's a reason that here in Northern Ireland, people don't feel comfortable associating with each other because of the histories that are either from the distant past or even from within the last generation.
And I think there's a considerable fear that we're heading that way here in the States. And so that's again why I thought, what she's experienced and her insights and her theological perspective and her faith can give us some insights.
Mm-hmm.
And also encouragement. This is hard work, because that's one thing I'm hearing from you is this is very hard work.
Yeah.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows.
No. And I think it's also really important to remember that how Corrymeela was founded was by somebody who'd seen the violence that could be perpetrated by his own side. He saw his own people bombing a city and killing innocent civilians. And he realized that if that is possible, then he needs to extend, a space to hear out who he thinks of as the enemy.
Even when you think you're on the right side, you're capable of doing enormous pain and destruction and violence.
Yeah. So being aware of that and conscious of that allows us to also hear out the person who we think of as the enemy, because they have a story too, and they have
for love and mercy shall evermore meet, and justice and peace shall greet with a kiss. From the ground shall spring kindness, goodness will shine from the skies, and God will bring healing, and the people will sing. For love and mercy shall evermore meet,
we're just going to talk about peace.
Okay.
And the reason, first of all, this is Zach.
Hello, I'm Zach.
And the reason I thought about you is because I know that your mom has, she's mentioned before that you all have some traditions or some rituals when you're not feeling peaceful that can help you. So I just wanted to ask, what does it feel like when you're not feeling peaceful?
You feel, for one of the things, you'd feel stressed, kind of out of place, not like you're really, just stressed and not really calm. I feel like when you're feeling peaceful, you're feeling more calm than stressed.
Okay, so you're more calm than stressed. What does it feel like to be stressed?
Well, sometimes with me, I get like butterflies in my stomach,
Mhm.
or maybe I feel kind of hot,
Okay.
like warm and just rigid, kind
Yeah.
of stuck, like I couldn't move.
Okay, yeah. And so then what does it feel like when you feel peace, when you're at peace?
Well, like I said before, you feel calm, but you also feel relaxed. Like when you're stressed, you'd be tensed up, and I wouldn't say you feel like hot, but like at a warm temperature, kind of like basically all the things that you'd feel regularly
Mhm.
are all the places when you feel comfortable. That those sort of feelings are what you would feel when you're calm.
So do you have a sense of how you would define peace?
At a state of like, just, you're not arguing with anything. You're kind of just letting it be. Like if something comes up, you just be like, okay, that's happening. You wouldn't dwell on it.
Oh, I love what you said about peace having to do with just letting it be.
Yeah.
Like there are things you can't control.
Mhm.
And so how to be peaceful even when things aren't going well.
Yeah.
Do you have things that you do that help you?
Well, I meditate usually every day with my grandmother.
And we're just going to talk about peace.
Okay.
And the reason, first of all, this is Zach.
Hello, I'm Zach.
And the reason I thought about you is because I know that your mom has, she's mentioned before that you all have some traditions or some rituals when you're not feeling peaceful that can help you. So I just wanted to ask, what does it feel like when you're not feeling peaceful?
You feel, for one of the things, you'd feel stressed, kind of out of place, not like you're really, just stressed and not really calm. I feel like when you're feeling peaceful, you're feeling more calm than stressed.
Okay, so you're more calm than stressed. What does it feel like to be stressed?
Well, sometimes with me, I get like butterflies in my stomach,
Mhm.
or maybe I feel kind of hot,
Okay.
like warm and just rigid, kind
Yeah.
of stuck, like I couldn't move.
Okay, yeah. And so then what does it feel like when you feel peace, when you're at peace?
Well, like I said before, you feel calm, but you also feel relaxed. Like when you're stressed, you'd be tensed up, and I wouldn't say you feel like hot, but like at a warm temperature, kind of like basically all the things that you'd feel regularly
Mhm.
are all the places when you feel comfortable. That those sort of feelings are what you would feel when you're calm.
So do you have a sense of how you would define peace?
At a state of like, just, you're not arguing with anything. You're kind of just letting it be. Like if something comes up, you just be like, okay, that's happening. You wouldn't dwell on it.
Oh, I love what you said about peace having to do with just letting it be.
Yeah.
Like there are things you can't control.
Mhm.
And so how to be peaceful even when things aren't going well.
Yeah.
Do you have things that you do that help you?
Well, I meditate usually every day with my grandmother. We're doing it together, so sometimes when I'm stressed, I'll use it to. Sometimes I'll take a break, or I might meditate. So those are ways I try to.
You know,
Okay.
can we talk a little bit about what you do when you meditate?
It depends. Sometimes when at the end, well, the end of every meditation, I feel better. But for the meditation, start off, I kind of sit in a resting sort of position.
Mm-hmm.
It might matter on the day, but I'd be like sitting down, just kind of closing my eyes and listening into something called the home base. In meditation, it's a thing that you focus on instead of all your thoughts in your head. And
You know what I love about the home base is in some ways it could be like home base is where you find God in your heart.
yeah,
Like that's home base.
yeah, it's like a way to just be paused and kind of. I don't know how to say that.
No, you're doing great. You're being very articulate. What do you think peace has to do with Christmas?
Well, after Christmas, I think this was when God was born. Though the conditions might have been harsh. Like right now, we're in COVID-19, but we can still find like the tiniest things to make us feel peaceful.
Like what? What kinds of things?
Maybe like being on time to an online class.
Mm-hmm.
Getting all your work done in online school for me is a really good one because even though there's not much to do, it feels like there's a huge weight that's been lifted off your chest because it's very hard to get on the classes on time and just things like that.
Gosh, I love because you have this balance, right? You said letting things be, but so there are some things you don't have any control over, but now you just described the things you do have control over that can bring you peace or get in the way of you knowing peace.
Yeah.
So I love that combination because I think you're right. It's not like you just sit back and you don't have any responsibility, but nor is it that you can control everything.
Mhm.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell people about peace?
I think it's kind of there's things that'll bring you peace.
Mm-hmm.
What I was thinking of earlier is how I describe peace and happy emotions.
Uh-huh.
Like maybe feeling gratitude toward others or compassion. Things like that would bring me peace. But also, I noticed that there's like, when I go outside and just feel the nice cool breeze, it's something that kind of makes me calm and feel at peace.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm sort of drifting off in space. Yeah, and that note, when I'm in a swimming pool, actually, there's this thing we do. I think we did this, once when I was with my brother at the swimming pool, and we just like kind of ball up and feel like we're floating in space in the really deep water.
Uh-huh.
That was the thing that made me feel calm. So.
You know, that was for me one of my like images of what it was like to be surrounded by God was to be in a swimming pool because the water holds you and you're all curled up in a ball and it's like being in space. You're right.
Yeah. I think astronauts actually, they use swimming pools to train for outer space, so it is cool in that way.
Mm-hmm. Are there other things that help you be peaceful?
I think a really good meal can sometimes make me feel peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
Where you eat something that like really settles your stomach. Like say that like when I'm exercising a ton, I'd be outside maybe practicing one of my like taekwondo or something. Once you get water, that feels really good. It's like something you've been striving for. Once you get it, you feel at peace.
Mm-hmm. Something you really desperately need.
Yeah.
Like that refreshment. Oh, I love the idea of peace as water, because you've talked about peace as space and peace as water. Peace is the air, the cool air on your skin.
Yeah.
You know, I have this image that part of what you're describing is how we find God's peace in nature, because all those things are from nature.
Yeah. Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Is there anything else?
No, not really. Well, there probably is. Actually, I think I find peaceful playing my instruments, like ukulele, just inside. Or actually, recently, when I'm in my house and it's like really cold, I have heaters on the floor, and I'd use those, and I kind of just sit on them with my shirt, and it would like blow it up and feel nice and relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
It also put me at peace.
So part of peace is being physically comfortable and physically taken care of.
And also mindfully comfortable. Like with meditation, I feel at peace when there's not stressful thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So.
You know, a lot of people think that meditation's really different from prayer, but I think they're very similar.
Yeah. In the way of meditation, you'd be like sitting down. When you're with God, you're kind of closing your eyes and sitting in a relaxed kind of like still position, not moving around or doing anything very physical. So,
Well, and if you think about it, you meditate when you're feeling all stressed, and that's often the time when we pray, when we ask God for help, because we need help calming down or knowing it's going to be okay. So it's very similar. Well, I really appreciate you talking with me about this.
Thanks.
It's I feel like you have some unique perspectives about what peace is, what it feels like, how you find it in your everyday life, that I think will really help a lot of people. Because it's the second Sunday of Advent. It's the Sunday of peace.
Yep.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Zach.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Amen.